It is 6 in the morning. Your alarm cuts through the dark. Your stomach feels hollow and completely empty right now. You skipped dinner last night. Or maybe you just skipped breakfast. Either way, no food is in your system at all. You are lacing up your shoes. You are walking into the gym on an empty stomach. Something feels very different today. There is a strange mix of feelings happening inside you. Part of you feels unusually sharp and clear and focused this morning. Part of you feels uncertain and a little nervous. You are not sure if this is smart or completely reckless right now. The air feels colder when your stomach is empty. Your body starts moving. But a quiet question follows every single step you take. Are you about to burn more fat than ever before, or are you about to crash hard before the session even ends? Fitness culture has turned fasted exercise into a loud and exhausting argument. Some people swear it burns fat faster than anything else. Others warn you will lose muscle, hurt your performance, or damage your hormones with fasted training on a regular basis. The advice pulls in all directions at once. The science sounds confusing at first glance. On the surface, you just feel hungry. Or maybe you feel surprisingly fine and completely ready to train. But beneath that calm feeling, something important is already happening. Your body is already making significant decisions beneath the surface before you even take a single step toward the gym today. Your liver is quietly checking how much stored glucose it has left from the night before. It is running its own inventory check. Your muscles are scanning their own private fuel reserves. They are calculating how long they can power you through this workout. Your fat cells are receiving a completely different signal than usual. They are being asked to release energy rather than hold it. Think of your entire metabolism standing in a locker room before a big game. Everyone is being assigned a very specific role. Insulin is low right now. That single fact opens the door for stored fat to start being broken down and used as fuel. Adrenaline begins to rise. Noradrenaline rises right alongside it. Your heart rate nudges slightly higher. Your cells are being told to get ready. This is the moment when your hormones quietly rewrite the rules of your workout. It happens long before you sweat or breathe hard. Your brain is watching all of this very carefully from the inside. It wants stable glucose and enough fuel to keep focus sharp. If your fast has gone on long enough overnight, your liver may already be making small amounts of ketones for your brain too. So what is actually happening when you train on an empty stomach this morning? Are you truly burning more fat right now? Are you putting your muscles at risk of being broken down? Or are you triggering a deeper and more powerful metabolic reset? How different is the internal story when you jog slowly versus squat heavy versus sprint hard while your body is fully fasted? Your body will be followed minute by minute, system by system, through a complete fasted training session so you understand exactly what happens. You will see what your organs, hormones, and fuel stores are actually doing during fasted exercise from the very first step you take. You will also understand clearly when fasted training helps you, and when it becomes a genuinely bad idea for your health. To understand what happens next, you need to know what a true fasted state actually means for your metabolism right now. Not eating for 2 hours after a light snack is not the same as training in a real fasted state at all. In that short window after eating, your insulin can still be elevated. Your stomach may still be quietly digesting that last meal. Your bloodstream is still rich with glucose from whatever you ate recently. You are still running entirely on the previous meal still. Imagine finishing dinner at 7 in the evening. You sleep through the night. You train at 7 the next morning without breakfast. That 12-hour gap with no calories, low insulin, and an empty stomach is the classic version of a fasted workout state. Your body is not in any kind of crisis during this window. But it has clearly shifted out of its normal fed mode. Extend that fast to 16, 18, or even 20 hours without food, and you enter a deeper version of this same metabolic state. In that deeper fasting state, glycogen is noticeably lower. Fat use is higher. ketones begin to quietly rise in your bloodstream too. There is a real difference between exercising while you are just not currently eating and exercising while your metabolism has fully accepted something. In the first case, you are still running on residual fuel from your last meal. In the second, your body reaches into reserves. That distinction is exactly what turns a regular morning workout into a rare and genuinely meaningful metabolic experiment for your body today. Picture your body as a survival orchestra. Your liver is the fuel manager in the back, controlling the entire energy release system. Your muscles are the engines in the percussion section, burning through stored fuel to create every single movement your body makes right now. Your fat cells are quiet storage vaults. They hold incredibly dense energy reserves that only get opened when insulin drops low enough. Your brain is the most demanding player in the front row. It requires a steady and protected supply of fuel at absolutely all times. Your metabolism is the conductor holding the entire orchestra together and making sure every section plays its proper role at the right time. When you are fed, the score is simple and familiar. Plenty of glucose is available. Insulin is higher. Quick energy is easy to access. When you are fasting and then start to move, the conductor flips the sheet music entirely and rewrites the rules of the performance. Adrenaline rises to mobilize fat from storage. Growth hormone climbs to help protect your lean muscle. Cortisol nudges glucose production for your brain. It is like switching from a familiar pop song to a complex survival symphony written specifically for movement under stress and low fuel. This is the moment when fasted training needs to be understood differently. It is not punishment. It is not deprivation or unnecessary suffering. It is a built-in operating mode that your ancestors relied on every single day of their lives, without any hesitation or choice. They moved before eating every single morning. They walked, tracked, hunted, and gathered first. Then they ate. Movement always came before food. This rarely accessed metabolic mode is one of the main reasons humans can be so incredibly flexible in how they produce energy. Before any training actually begins today, the real story starts quietly. It starts hours before your alarm goes off with your last meal. Imagine finishing dinner, closing the kitchen, and thinking your day is completely done. Nothing dramatic appears to be happening on the surface. Beneath the surface, your body is already rearranging its entire fuel supply in quiet preparation for the hours ahead without incoming food. The carbohydrates from that last meal were broken down into glucose. They were absorbed into your bloodstream almost immediately after you finished eating. In response, your insulin rose. That hormone acted like a key unlocking your cells so they could pull in glucose and amino acids. Your liver took a generous share of that glucose and stored it as glycogen for use later as an on-call energy reserve. Your muscles did exactly the same thing. They packed away glycogen as tomorrow's potential movement fuel, even without any specific training plan yet. Think of that dinner as a loading phase for your body. Liver glycogen becomes the reserve that keeps your blood sugar stable overnight. Muscle glycogen becomes a private energy account that only your muscles can spend during physical activity and exercise later on today. As long as insulin remained high after eating, your fat cells stayed mostly locked and were encouraged to store rather than release anything. Then the night unfolded slowly and quietly. Hours passed. You were not eating at all, but your brain still demanded steady glucose always. Your liver quietly stepped in and broke down its glycogen stores through the night. It released glucose to keep your brain safely supplied. Meanwhile, insulin began to fall steadily with each passing hour. The hormonal tone slowly shifted from storage mode toward energy access mode. It is like dimming the lights in one room, while slowly and gently turning them on brightly in a completely different room elsewhere. By the time you wake up, you are already in a completely different metabolic state than you were right after finishing dinner. Liver glycogen has been steadily tapped throughout the night to fuel your sleeping brain. Insulin is now low. Fat cells are more open. This is the turning point in your overnight metabolism. Your body is no longer dominated by the fuel from your last meal. It is now negotiating with its own deeply stored reserves and deciding how to allocate those reserves for whatever the morning will bring. A metabolically flexible body glides through this transition smoothly and easily. It shifts from meal-derived glucose to liver glycogen to increasing fat use. If the fast continues long enough, it eventually shifts toward ketones as a supplementary brain fuel too. Each transition happens quietly, without drama. Fasted exercise is a live drill for that metabolic flexibility you want to develop. It challenges your body to perform without fresh external fuel. For some people, this feels like a gentle and manageable emptiness, a light hunger that does not interfere with anything at all yet. For others, it feels surprisingly clear and focused. The absence of a heavy recent meal actually makes morning movement feel lighter and easier. Low insulin pairs with slightly elevated adrenaline and norepinephrine. These hormones wake up your nervous system and sharpen your mental focus naturally. It is like your body senses the absence of food and leans forward. It primes you to go find what you need now. Your heart rate is slightly more responsive in this fasted state. Alertness rises noticeably. Your muscles are quietly ready to use stored reserves. Before you even lace up your shoes, the internal rules have already changed. Your metabolism is running on a completely different program now. But the real action begins the moment you take that first step, rack the first weight, or launch into that opening sprint effort. Your body has to prove whether all that silent overnight preparation was actually enough to power you through what you are about to demand. In the very first minute of your workout, your decision becomes physical motion. Your heart rate rises. Your breathing deepens almost immediately. That nagging edge of hunger starts fading into the background. Your nervous system shifts completely from rest mode into full action mode now. It is like your body simply says, "Food can wait. We have real work to do right this moment. Let us go perform." Imagine you begin with a light jog or a brisk walk. The muscles in your legs immediately pull in more blood and oxygen. They reach for the fastest fuel they can access right now. That fuel is local glycogen stored inside the muscle cells directly. This is the carbohydrate your muscles packed away from previous meals. It is close and reliable and easy to access in early minutes. Meanwhile, your liver is quietly backing up your muscles from the central energy management position it has held all night long already. As you start moving, that liver drip of glucose into your blood becomes a slightly larger and more responsive steady stream now. Think of your muscles as spending from their personal wallets right now. Your liver is running the central bank, keeping blood sugar stable. This is where the contrast with a fed workout really begins to show up under the surface, where you cannot see it happening. If you had just eaten, insulin would be higher right now. That hormone would push circulating glucose into cells and slow fat breakdown. In a fully fed state, your body is told clearly to use what just came in from the meal as its first priority. During fasting, insulin is already low. That biochemical lock on fat breakdown is released. Fat is already flowing more freely into the blood. Even in the first 5 to 10 minutes, more fat is being allowed to leave its storage sites and enter your bloodstream actively. As your pace settles into a comfortable rhythm, adrenaline and noradrenaline begin climbing toward their active working levels during fasted movement. These stress hormones are not just about excitement or nervousness. They are precise biochemical signals being broadcast throughout your entire body right now. They bind to receptors on your fat cells and tell them to start cutting stored triglycerides into free fatty acids immediately and efficiently. Those released fatty acids float into your bloodstream. They travel to your muscles and are burned inside the mitochondria of those working cells. During low to moderate fasted, cardio fat use can rise by 20 to 30% compared to the exact same workout after eating. From the outside, absolutely nothing looks different or special about your performance. You might feel lighter than usual. You might feel surprisingly focused. Performance in these opening 10 minutes is almost identical whether you trained fasted today or whether you finished a full meal beforehand. But inside your body, the fuel balance is already tilting meaningfully. Less dependence on glucose. More reliance on fat stores as primary fuel. This shift is small but genuinely important. If you keep going, those early hormonal changes will determine how your body adapts long-term. Now imagine you actually keep going past that initial warm-up phase. You move straight into a 30 to 45-minute steady session. You are 12 to 16 hours into your fasting window. You are doing a brisk walk, light jog, or easy cycling still fasted. At first, the session feels surprisingly normal and manageable. Your legs loosen up nicely. Your breathing finds a steady and comfortable rhythm. Your brain starts to drift pleasantly. Thoughts wander. This is when your body settles completely into what you might call pure cruise mode. You are not sprinting at all. You are not gasping for air. You are sitting in that low to moderate sustainable working zone. You could hold a full conversation if needed, but you clearly know your body is working and burning fuel throughout this session. Your metabolism is making a quieter and deeper fuel decision in this zone than it does during harder or shorter training efforts. Muscle glycogen is still available and accessible, but your body starts spending it carefully now. It is not reckless with this limited resource. Think of glycogen as the emergency cash sitting in your physical wallet right now. Your fat stores are the savings account in the bank. During steady fasted cardio in this zone, your body finally starts using that savings account more regularly and more confidently than before. Low insulin is the entire reason the savings account even opens and becomes accessible for your muscles to draw from during movement. After 12 to 16 hours of fasting, insulin is suppressed enough to remove the biochemical lock that normally keeps fat stores sealed shut. Meanwhile, the exercise itself nudges adrenaline and noradrenaline upward. These hormones actively tell your fat cells to open up and release stored energy. Fatty acids spill out into the bloodstream. They travel to working muscles and are burned efficiently in the mitochondria inside those cells. Studies consistently show fat oxidation can be 20 to 30% higher in this fasted state than after a carbohydrate-heavy breakfast meal. Growth hormone quietly joins this expanding hormonal picture as your fasted workout continues beyond the early warm-up phase into sustained movement. Fasting alone can raise growth hormone several times above baseline. Layering exercise on top of fasting amplifies that signal even more significantly. It is like your body switches on a preserve the machinery and burn the stored fuel mode that rarely activates in a fed state. Growth hormone supports fat mobilization, while simultaneously and actively helping to protect your lean muscle tissue from being burned as emergency fuel. Training fasted at these gentle and sustainable intensities does not automatically mean you are consuming your own hard-earned muscle for energy. But there are real limits to the fat-burning advantage that fasted training provides. It is not a magic override of basic physics. Total fat loss still depends entirely on your overall calorie balance across the full day and week. Your body is incredibly clever here. If you push hard during fasted training, your body may nudge you toward more hunger later in the day to compensate for the deficit. The real lasting advantage is metabolic flexibility. Teaching your body to comfortably tap into fat reserves without panicking or demanding immediate carbohydrate input. And this calm, fat-focused training state is genuinely fragile in one very important way that most people never hear explained clearly. The moment you increase intensity toward heavy lifting or true high-intensity intervals, your muscles make a completely different and much louder demand. They stop politely asking for slow and steady fat fuel. They start urgently shouting for fast and powerful glucose energy delivered immediately. What happens when both your brain and your muscles suddenly demand high-speed glucose and fat simply cannot deliver at that rate? When you slam high-intensity training on top of a fasted state, your body must respond extremely fast. There is no time to adjust. Imagine hitting your first all-out sprint interval after not eating since dinner last night. For a few bursts, it feels like free power. Then suddenly the edges of your vision blur slightly. Your legs burn harder than expected. A faint lightheaded feeling creeps in slowly. This is the moment when your metabolism actually hits its red line, and the balancing act becomes dangerously difficult to maintain safely. High-intensity intervals rely entirely on the fastest energy your muscles can access. That means stored glycogen and immediate phosphocreatine systems only. Think of low-intensity fasted walking as asking your fat to drip steadily into the engine like a slow and reliable fuel source. High-intensity intervals demand a full fire hose of glucose delivered instantly to your working muscles. Fat simply cannot deliver at that rate. Your muscles still have glycogen if you ate well yesterday. But your liver may already be partially drained from the overnight fasting period. All night long, your liver quietly fed your sleeping brain glucose from its own limited reserves. It gave what it had without stopping. So during fasted high-intensity training, your body is playing a genuinely dangerous balancing act between competing urgent demands for limited available fuel. It must keep enough glucose available for your demanding brain while simultaneously meeting the massive sudden demand from your maximally working muscles. It is like trying to power a race car and a hospital at exactly the same time from one single limited generator. Impossible. This is when your stress hormones step in with aggressive urgency. Adrenaline and noradrenaline surge the moment you push into true sprint territory. Your heart rate spikes hard. Your breathing sharpens dramatically. Your entire nervous system flips immediately into full emergency response alert mode. These powerful hormones tell your liver to dump more glucose urgently into the blood. They tell fat cells to release more fatty acids. They simultaneously tell your working muscles to give absolutely everything available right now and deal with the cost of that decision later. Meanwhile, cortisol rises as the longer-acting and more sustained stress signal during this kind of intense fasted training effort today. When glycogen starts running critically low, cortisol authorizes its backup plans for keeping you moving and keeping your blood sugar from crashing completely. One of those backup plans involves breaking down amino acids from muscle protein to create more glucose through a process called gluconeogenesis. That backup plan is useful for survival in the short term, but it has a real and meaningful cost that you will feel afterward. Repeated hard intervals done in a deeply fasted state can measurably increase protein breakdown and make you feel completely drained rather than energized. Recovery from these sessions takes longer than expected. Performance in subsequent sessions drops. The overall training stress begins to accumulate against you. For some people, especially beginners, fasted high-intensity training feels less like a useful metabolic tool and more like a total physiological crash. Performance drops noticeably. Recovery slows significantly. That wired but tired and shaky sensation can linger for many hours after the session ends. Now contrast that painful experience with a calm, low-intensity fasted walk in the early morning light. Everything is different in this version. Your breathing is easy and comfortable. Your thoughts drift pleasantly. Your body quietly and efficiently burns fat without any hormonal panic or emergency. Same fasting window. Completely different internal story. The intensity level you choose completely rewrites the hormonal script your body is following today. This is the critical turning point in understanding fasted training properly. It is not one single practice with one single predictable outcome. It is a wide spectrum of completely different physiological experiences depending entirely on the intensity you bring to your fasted session today. Your hormones interpret a calm fasted walk completely differently than they interpret a maximum effort sprint done in that exact same fasting window. The question becomes, how do you use this spectrum intelligently without accidentally tipping your body into hormonal overload or progressive metabolic burnout? Now imagine walking into the gym fully fasted. No pre-workout snack, no protein shake, just you and the barbell sitting there waiting. You grip the cold steel. You unrack the weight carefully. Something surprising happens almost immediately. The first few sets feel almost completely normal. Your body does not instantly crash just because breakfast never happened this morning. Your muscles have their own private fuel reserves to draw from. For heavy sets of 5 to 12 reps, your primary energy comes from stored APP, creatine phosphate, and glycogen inside your own muscle cells. Think of it as a battery pack built directly into your muscle cells. It is not powered by what you ate this morning. As long as your overall glycogen is reasonably topped up from eating adequately in the previous days, the session usually feels almost identical. You might notice a slight dip in the pump feeling or that full, tight sensation during the sets, but raw strength usually holds. Studies on short-term fasting of up to around 24 hours show minimal change in maximal strength output for most generally healthy people tested. This is where one of the biggest fears about fasted training shows up loudly in people's minds when they consider trying it. Are you lifting weights productively right now? Or are you actually losing your hard-earned muscle by training on an empty stomach today? Your brain loves this question because it sounds exactly like a genuine survival threat to everything you have worked hard to build. It is like your metabolism asking itself whether there is no food coming in should muscle tissue become the emergency fuel right now. In the short term, for most healthy people, the honest answer is usually no. Muscle is expensive, and your body tries to protect it. This protection is especially strong when you are actively sending a powerful training signal through resistance work telling your body to keep muscle. Actual significant muscle loss is driven far less by any single fasted workout, and far more by chronic undereating of total protein and calories. If your total daily protein intake is adequate, and your weekly total calories are not extremely low, fasted lifting can still build muscle. Where timing genuinely matters is in what happens immediately after you rack your last set, and the session officially and completely ends. Your muscle fibers are productively damaged right now. Your nervous system is fatigued. Your cells are primed and ready to repair and rebuild. The old idea of a strict 30-minute anabolic window is significantly exaggerated. But there is still a meaningful post-workout window of opportunity. Breaking your fast with a solid hit of quality protein plus some carbohydrates will amplify muscle protein synthesis significantly after fasted lifting. Think of your post-workout meal as the construction crew arriving exactly when the demolition team finishes tearing down and clears the job site. If you train fasted regularly, that post-lift meal becomes even more strategically important because it reassures your body that rebuilding is now safe. Behind the calm surface of your fasted lifting session, your hormones are constantly negotiating with each other throughout the entire training period. Insulin stays low throughout the session. Growth hormone often climbs significantly above its normal baseline resting level during fasted strength work. Cortisol rises steadily in response to the physical and metabolic stress of heavy lifting, combined with the background stress of ongoing fasting. These three hormones are quietly but intensely negotiating the ultimate outcome of everything your body will do during and after this session. Build new muscle tissue. Preserve existing muscle tissue. Or begin breaking it down as an emergency backup fuel source for glucose production. Train without recent food intake, and the terms of that internal hormonal negotiation change in ways that can work strongly for or against you. Start with insulin during your fasted strength session. It is already low before you even approach the barbell, and it stays suppressed throughout. Low insulin effectively takes the brakes completely off fat as a fuel source during your lifting session. Fat cells open up willingly. In a fed workout, insulin is higher, and it consistently steers your body toward burning the glucose from the meal you just ate. Same exercise movements, same person. Completely different hormonal referee making completely different fuel allocation decisions based entirely on your recent eating timing. With low insulin, your body is far more willing to reach into long-term fat reserves instead of just spending recent meal-derived glucose. Meanwhile, adrenaline and noradrenaline step forward and take on a much larger role during a fasted workout than they typically would after eating. Fasting alone nudges these catecholamines upward. Adding exercise pushes them even higher toward their full working range. You feel this as sharper focus. It is like your brain quietly flips into a focused hunting mode. Your entire system primes itself to perform and acquire what it needs. Biochemically, these powerful molecules tell fat cells to break down triglycerides, and they signal the liver to release glucose to stabilize blood sugar. This is why you sometimes feel surprisingly wired and mentally sharp in a fasted workout, even without any caffeine or pre-workout product. Now bring growth hormone into this full hormonal conversation. Both fasting and exercise raise it significantly, especially over longer fasting windows of 16+ hours. Imagine growth hormone as a quiet but effective bodyguard, protecting your lean muscle mass during periods of low fuel and high physical demand. It does not build new muscle by itself during the actual workout, but it actively supports fat mobilization and protects muscle protein from burning. Later, when you finally break the fast and give your body adequate protein, that elevated growth hormone environment helps cells repair and rebuild efficiently. Then there is cortisol, the double-edged and widely misunderstood stress hormone that appears in almost every fasted training discussion with fear attached. You actually need cortisol working for you. It helps mobilize fuel. It maintains blood glucose. It keeps you alert under real physical stress. In a moderate fasted workout, cortisol partners effectively with adrenaline to keep you moving and performing without crashing or losing critical momentum. But push too hard for too long on top of poor sleep or existing chronic life stress, and cortisol tips the balance against you. It starts tilting your body toward muscle breakdown, persistent post-workout fatigue, and that drained rather than energized feeling after every session. Here is the important pattern to understand clearly. None of these hormones are heroes or villains in the story of fasted exercise. They are all skilled negotiators in an ongoing high-stakes internal meeting about what your body should do with its limited available resources. Insulin argues for stability and energy storage. Adrenaline pushes hard for immediate performance. Growth hormone leans toward long-term preservation of lean tissue. Cortisol demands survival at any cost and is not concerned with your aesthetic or performance goals in the slightest during moments of stress. How they ultimately vote depends entirely on how hard you train, how long your fast has been, and how often you repeat this stress. Your results from fasted training come less from any one magic hormone, and more from the overall balance of this ongoing hormonal conversation. Now imagine you are actually 25 minutes deep into your fasted session. You have been fasting since last night without any food at all. This is the phase where many people are genuinely surprised by how good they actually feel in the middle of a fasted workout. Your body has cleared the distraction and metabolic overhead of active digestion. Insulin is low. Adrenaline is gently elevated and working for you. Your brain is getting a clean and steady supply of fuel from both remaining blood glucose and rapidly increasing fat oxidation from stores. It is like your nervous system has turned all the background noise down to nearly nothing and turned the focus dial all the way up. Movements feel more automatic than usual. Your breathing feels controlled and efficient. Mental clarity feels sharper than you expected for someone without breakfast. For moderate cardio or a standard strength training session, performance here can feel almost identical to how it feels on a fully fed day. If your overall daily nutrition is consistently solid, and your sleep was genuinely decent, your muscles came in with adequate glycogen already stored. Your liver is still quietly releasing glucose to stabilize blood sugar throughout the session. Fat cells are donating fatty acids to your muscles. Multiple studies consistently show that strength during conventional short sets and low to moderate cardio pace stays similar in a 12 to 16-hour fast. But as the session clock keeps ticking toward the later stages, the internal tone can begin shifting in ways you will start to notice. Push into very long sessions, extremely high training volume, or extended sprint intervals, and you start asking your muscles for something they struggle with. Rapid and repeated bursts of maximum power output. That is glycogen's specialty. And glycogen may be running genuinely low at this stage now. Once glycogen stores drop significantly, you may notice slower bar speed on your lifts. Your legs may feel flat and completely unresponsive. Intervals that normally challenge you appropriately suddenly feel impossibly and unfairly heavy. Your body is trying to lean more on fat but cannot. This marks the internal shift that many fasted training athletes notice but cannot quite explain when asked to describe what it felt like. Heart rate climbs faster than your actual effort level seems to justify. Rest periods feel too short even when they are identical to before. Mental sharpness can blur into mild irritability and fog as your brain senses that quick-access glucose is becoming genuinely limited during the session. Meanwhile, hormones like cortisol and adrenaline spike higher, trying urgently to keep you moving through the session without a complete and total collapse. That additional hormone spike is helpful in the immediate moment. But repeated daily without sufficient recovery, it starts draining your system progressively over time. There are also clear physical warning signals that you should never choose to push through during a fasted workout no matter what. Dizziness appearing during your session is a warning signal. Nausea rising unexpectedly is a warning signal. Tunnel vision narrowing is a serious red flag. A sudden, unexplained wave of physical weakness that comes from nowhere is your body demanding that you stop and make an immediate adjustment now. These signals mean your blood pressure or blood sugar may be dropping further than your body can safely manage during this fasted movement. If your heart is pounding wildly and completely out of proportion to your actual physical effort level, slow down and make changes immediately. If your hands feel shaky or your peripheral vision begins to narrow at the edges, stop the session and break the fast now. A good fasted workout where you stay in that steady, focused zone gradually teaches your cells to switch between fuels more gracefully. A bad fasted workout repeated too often without adequate recovery slowly and quietly pushes your physiology toward burnout rather than the resilience you want. As the last rep ends and the weight hits the floor, the real metabolic drama quietly begins its most important phase of all. Your heart is still pounding. Your breathing is still sharp. Your body is now deciding exactly how to pay the bill for today. Over the next few minutes, your heart rate begins its slow and steady descent. Sweat cools on your skin. Adrenaline starts pulling back. This is when hunger signals completely change their character. For some people, appetite roars back in almost dizzyingly fast after finishing a fasted session. For others, there is a strange and temporary calm. A brief window where you feel almost no hunger at all despite low fuel. As adrenaline and noradrenaline fade, ghrelin and other appetite-signaling hormones quietly rise back up in the background of your hormonal landscape. Your brain is reading those hunger messages against the backdrop of low insulin, rising fat use, and possible early ketone production right now. The question your metabolism is urgently asking is simple. Rebuild now with incoming nutrition, or keep stretching the fast a little bit longer? Under the surface, your recovery priorities are very clear and very logically organized despite how chaotic the post-workout internal state actually feels. First, your body stabilizes blood pressure and blood energy levels as the absolute top priority after any challenging physical session ends. Then, it begins carefully refilling the short-term glycogen battery that powers your muscles and keeps your brain functioning reliably throughout recovery. Finally, it begins the slower and more complex work of rebuilding the specific muscle fibers that were productively damaged during your training session. Protein is the essential raw material for all of that reconstruction work. Your muscles cannot repair themselves without a sufficient supply of amino acids. Muscle protein synthesis is primed and receptive after training, but it still needs actual amino acids delivered from food through your digestive system. This is where breaking your fast after training becomes a truly strategic and important decision, rather than just an emotional response to sudden hunger. Eating within a couple of hours after a fasted session gives your muscles the protein they need and provides carbohydrates for glycogen replacement. It is not the old myth of a strict 30-minute anabolic window, but consistently underfueling this period does blunt recovery and performance meaningfully. Think of it like running a construction crew on a job site without ever providing them with any building materials to actually work with. You can send all the repair signals you want through training. Without enough total daily protein, your body cannot fully protect and rebuild muscle. Short-term fasted workouts by themselves do not automatically strip muscle, especially when growth hormone is elevated and your overall daily intake stays adequate. The real risk appears when chronic undereating collides with high training volume, insufficient protein intake, and consistently poor sleep quality over time. Meanwhile, your metabolism is quietly taking detailed notes about every single fasted session you complete. Every delayed meal teaches your cells something new. Over the next few weeks of consistent fasted training, those notes become permanent edits to how your body naturally prefers to produce energy. Your body does not just survive empty stomach workouts over time. It gradually rewrites its preferred metabolic operating program in response to the stress. This is when the real engine upgrade begins deep inside your muscle cells. Think of your metabolism as having a gear shifter available. One gear is glucose, the quick-burning, instantly available fuel. Another gear is fat, slower but representing an almost unlimited energy reserve. Metabolic flexibility is the ability to glide smoothly between those gears depending on what the exercise demands and what fuel is currently available. Regular fasted workouts are like dedicated driving practice for that gear shifter. At first, the transitions feel rough, uncomfortable, and uncertain during sessions. Over weeks of consistent practice, the transitions become smooth and automatic. Inside your muscles, the actual physical hardware begins changing in measurable ways. Imagine each muscle fiber slowly adding additional mitochondria. These are the tiny power plants inside your cells responsible for burning fat for energy. They increase in both number and efficiency over weeks of consistent training. The enzymes that oxidize fat become more active and more capable. That means during submaximal exercise like a 45-minute brisk walk, your body can pull significantly more fat into those expanding mitochondria. It spares precious glycogen for the moments when you actually need fast, powerful glucose energy, rather than slow, steady fat burning. The same pace that once felt draining on an empty stomach gradually begins to feel normal and surprisingly manageable over weeks of adaptation. Studies show that with repeated fasted cardio over several weeks, trained individuals can increase fat oxidation by 20 to 30% during exercise. It is like telling your muscles repeatedly to learn to live off the land. And over a few dedicated weeks, they actually do. Your liver actively supports this metabolic shift by becoming more efficient at releasing fatty acids and producing small amounts of ketones for the brain. There is another quiet and highly valuable upgrade happening simultaneously that rarely gets mentioned when people discuss fasted training benefits online. That upgrade is improved insulin sensitivity throughout your muscles and liver. Low insulin during fasting opens the door for fat release already. When you layer consistent exercise on top of that fasting signal, your muscle cells become noticeably more responsive to insulin later in the day. Glucose slips into cells more easily after your next meal. Blood sugar is better controlled with smaller and more manageable hormonal responses. Over time, this measurable improvement in insulin sensitivity can meaningfully lower the long-term risk of insulin resistance and type 2 diabetes developing. It is not just about burning more fat during the session itself, it is about teaching your entire hormonal system to handle food better. But not every body adapts to fasted training at the same speed or with the same degree of ease and comfort throughout the process. Trained individuals often show the biggest immediate bump in fat use from fasted cardio because their muscles already have higher baseline mitochondrial density. Beginners can absolutely adapt over several weeks of consistent practice, but they will likely feel more fatigue and dizziness during the early adjustment period. For beginners, intensity must stay genuinely low to moderate with close, consistent attention paid to hydration, electrolyte intake, and total daily calorie and protein targets. Modern fitness culture constantly tells you to sip sugary pre-workout drinks, snack every 2 hours, and never tolerate even a manageable sense of hunger. Yet for most of human history, movement came first, and eating followed after. You moved your body. Then you found food and ate. Your biology still fundamentally expects you to walk, work, or perform physical activity before receiving that first meal of the morning each day. Fasted training done intelligently is less a modern biohack and more a return to the older and more natural metabolic rhythm of human survival. When your body settles into this rhythm over weeks, the question shifts from whether you can train fasted to how well you actually adapt. This is when the conversation moves beyond calories and macros into something far deeper and more interesting happening at the cellular level inside you. When you train while fasting, your body is not just burning more fat from storage. It is quietly cleaning house at the cellular level. Imagine every cell in your body as a tiny city that has been running continuously for years. Over time, trash inevitably accumulates inside. Damaged proteins pile up. Broken mitochondria that no longer function properly accumulate. Misfolded enzymes that cannot do their jobs collect throughout the cell. Autophagy is the built-in cellular recycling crew that activates during periods of metabolic stress and low fuel availability throughout your body. It carefully tags all the cellular waste, breaks it down systematically, and reuses the salvaged parts for energy production or new structure building. Fasting is one of the most powerful signals that tells these recycling crews to wake up, clock in, and get immediately to work. When glucose and constant snacks are always flowing into your system, your cells feel metabolically wealthy. They spend freely, grow, and store excess energy. When you are fasting and insulin drops and ketones begin to rise quietly, the internal message flips entirely toward conservation and active repair mode. Resources are perceived as limited. Instead of building new structures, your body focuses completely on repairing and upgrading what it already has available. That is when autophagy ramps up most noticeably and most powerfully, especially during fasting periods of 16 or more consecutive hours without food. Now layer vigorous exercise on top of that fasting-driven autophagy signal. A workout is a carefully controlled physical stress applied to your body. Your muscles contract powerfully. Your heart rate climbs. Your entire metabolism surges in response to the physical and metabolic demands being placed on it. Tiny amounts of productive damage occur inside your muscle fibers and mitochondria during every workout session. That micro-damage triggers the adaptation response. When you do this in a fasted state, you deliver two powerful stress signals simultaneously to every cell in your working body. The first signal says resources are currently limited and cellular cleanup needs to happen now. The second says we need to get physically stronger. It is like your cells receive a double urgent notification at exactly the same time. Clean up old damaged equipment and upgrade whatever remains functional. Animal research consistently shows that both fasting and exercise can independently stimulate autophagy and powerful cellular defense pathways in measurable and meaningful ways. In humans, the complete picture is still being carefully mapped by researchers. Early human data suggests training with low glycogen may amplify cleanup signals, but the exact dose, duration, and full long-term impact of combining fasting with exercise on human cellular health are still being actively researched. Meanwhile, there is another important silent player operating in the background of all this cellular activity. That silent player is chronic low-grade inflammation. Chronic low-grade inflammation throughout the body is closely and consistently linked to heart disease, type 2 diabetes, joint pain, and brain-related cognitive decline. Fasted training will not magically erase all inflammation in your body, but it can meaningfully address several of its most important root causes. Improved insulin sensitivity means your body handles incoming glucose from meals with significantly less hormonal chaos and less inflammatory signaling after each meal. Greater fat loss over consistent weeks reduces the inflammatory chemical signals that are continuously produced and released by excess fat tissue throughout the body. Better mitochondrial function after weeks of adaptation means less oxidative stress leaking out of your cellular power plants during and after every workout. This is the turning point in how you understand what your workouts are actually doing for you beyond simple and immediate calorie burning. You are not just burning calories during a fasted workout. You are actively training your cells to be more efficient and more resilient. But there are important limits to what short daily fasting combined with moderate exercise can realistically accomplish at the deep cellular and anti-inflammatory level. Most detailed autophagy research in living organisms comes from animal studies, or from research involving much longer multi-day fasting periods than simple overnight fasts. Short daily fasting plus moderate exercise probably consistently nudges you in a meaningfully positive cellular direction over weeks and months of practice. But it lives inside a much larger and more comprehensive health picture that includes many other crucial daily lifestyle choices and habits too. Quality deep sleep matters enormously for cellular repair. A genuinely nutrient-dense whole food diet matters significantly for providing repair materials to your cells. Not constantly spiking your body with ultra-processed foods loaded with refined sugar and seed oils also matters significantly for reducing baseline inflammation. The most surprising ultimate target of all this cellular housekeeping is not only your muscles, or your liver, or your cardiovascular system. The real and unexpected plot twist is what happens when this fasted, cleaner running metabolism meets the most energy-hungry organ you own entirely. That organ is your brain. The next shift in your understanding is not just about burning fat or improving insulin sensitivity as expected. It is about mental focus, mood stability, and the surprising possibility of long-term brain protection through repeated intelligent fasted training practice. When you step into a fasted workout, the organ that actually notices the change first is not your stomach at all. It is your brain. Within the first few minutes of beginning movement, you can feel it happening clearly. Either a sharp and remarkably clean mental energy appears, or alternatively, a wave of fog, growing distraction, and rising irritation arrives that makes the session feel harder than it has any right to. Both of these experiences are completely real and genuinely valid. Both make total sense once you understand what your brain is actually running on. At the start of a typical overnight fast, your brain is still primarily running on glucose. It prefers and demands glucose as its first fuel. Your liver quietly breaks down its overnight glycogen stores to drip-feed glucose steadily into your blood and keep your neurons properly supplied. This is why most people can comfortably do light to moderate exercise after an overnight fast and feel surprisingly mentally clear and sharp throughout. Blood sugar is stable enough. Insulin is low. Energy delivery to the brain is smooth and consistent rather than spiky and unreliable. Imagine an easy early morning walk after 12 hours without food. Your body is tapping more fat for your muscles during movement. But your brain is still primarily running on glucose being carefully maintained by your liver throughout the session. That combination feels like calm focus. No post-meal energy crash dragging you down. No heavy digestion pulling blood away from your brain. Just steady and clean mental output. In fact, many regular fasted exercisers describe a mild and pleasant mental clarity during fasted cardio. Background mental noise seems to quiet down noticeably. But if your glycogen was already low from poor eating the day before, or you slept badly, the same session can feel brutal. Your brain senses that glucose is dipping faster than your liver can possibly replace it. Adrenaline and cortisol climb aggressively to compensate immediately. Your perception shifts into that deeply uncomfortable, tired but wired state. Edgy. Unfocused. Maybe unreasonably irritated at completely small and unimportant things around you. It is like your internal alarm system blaring loudly that fuel is dangerously tight while simultaneously demanding to know why you are doing sprints. As fasting stretches beyond 16 hours, your metabolism quietly begins the most interesting shift relevant to how your brain experiences movement and effort. Your liver begins actively converting fatty acids into ketone bodies as an alternative energy source available to both your brain and your muscles. If you regularly train fasted over weeks, your brain gradually learns to use those ketones more efficiently and more reliably as supplementary fuel. Think of glucose as quickly burning kindling that lights fast but burns through equally fast when the demand is consistently high enough. Ketones are the slow, steady log placed on that same fire. They burn longer, more evenly, and with fewer sharp ups and downs. You still use glucose as your brain's primary fuel source. But ketones begin to meaningfully supplement, especially in the 16 to 24-hour range. Combining fasting with exercise nudges this metabolic shift toward ketone supplementation faster in some people than fasting alone accomplishes over equivalent time periods. Your working muscles pull more glucose out of the circulating blood during exercise. This pushes your liver to ramp up fat breakdown urgently. For a brain that has adapted to using ketones efficiently, this can feel like locked-in concentration with far fewer energy peaks and valleys. For a brain that has not yet adapted to this fuel shift, it can feel like an additional stressor piled onto an already challenging state. Meanwhile, your mood during a fasted workout is being shaped and tuned by considerably more factors than just the fuel your brain is using. Exercise releases endorphins, dopamine, and other powerful neurotransmitters that can genuinely feel like a complete mental reset regardless of what you ate beforehand. Fasting changes levels of ghrelin, the hormone commonly called the hunger hormone. But ghrelin does far more than simply make you desire food. It actively communicates with brain regions directly involved in learning capacity, motivational drive, memory formation, and overall mood regulation throughout the entire day. That mid-workout hunger pang is not merely a stomach complaint. It is an active negotiation between your gut, your brain, and your working muscles. Your body is continuously asking a fundamental question. Do we spend available energy on current physical performance right now? Or do we slow down and protect? If your life is already heavily loaded with chronic stress and accumulated sleep debt, that internal negotiation consistently tilts toward anxiety and mental fatigue. Training fasted in an already significantly depleted state can amplify those negative mental experiences rather than building the resilience you originally set out to develop. If your overall recovery is solid, and you build into fasted training gradually and intelligently over weeks, the same negotiation can feel like genuine clarity, as if your brain has finally stopped constantly chasing the next snack and started listening to deeper and more meaningful internal fuel cues instead. This is the turning point in how you begin to relate to hunger and physical effort in a completely different and more empowered way. You are no longer just reactively responding to habitual cravings and clock-based eating patterns. You are learning the actual language your hormones speak daily. And that hormonal language matters even more when considering who should and absolutely should not be experimenting with fasted training at any intensity level. Not every body should be speaking this particular hormonal language in the same way or with the same degree of fasting intensity and frequency. Think of fasted training like a genuinely powerful and useful medication. The right dose for the right person at the right time is transformative. The wrong match for the wrong person at the wrong time can leave you in serious trouble wondering what went so completely wrong so fast. First, there are people who tend to consistently thrive with fasted workouts when approached intelligently and with appropriate intensity and duration choices made daily. If you are a generally healthy adult with stable blood sugar and no history of disordered eating, your body is often well primed for this. Think about whether you can skip breakfast occasionally without shaking, snapping angrily at everyone around you, or feeling like your brain has completely shut down. If you can manage that without significant distress, you likely have decent baseline metabolic flexibility that fasted training can build upon effectively over time. This is when fasted low to moderate cardio can truly shine as a useful and sustainable metabolic training tool in your regular fitness routine. A 30 to 45-minute brisk walk after a 12 to 16-hour fast can push fat burning without draining or depleting your system. Your brain may even feel noticeably clearer as ketones begin to rise gently in the background and supplement glucose as supplementary brain fuel. But there are genuinely higher risk groups who should pause thoughtfully and carefully before jumping into any fasted training experiment without professional guidance first. If you have diabetes or any blood sugar regulation disorder, fasting combined with exercise can drive blood glucose to dangerously low levels very quickly. If your blood pressure already tends to run low, if you faint easily, if you are pregnant or currently breastfeeding, please stop and consult a doctor. If you are currently taking medications that affect insulin levels or blood pressure regulation, fasted training is absolutely not a self-directed DIY experiment. If you have any past or current relationship with an eating disorder of any kind, please seek both medical and mental health guidance first. In these specific situations, the combination of low glucose, rapidly shifting hormones, and intense physical training stress can push your body toward crisis rather than resilience. Your body will usually send early warning signals if fasted training is starting to backfire before it becomes a genuinely serious health problem. Recurring dizziness during fasted sessions is an early warning worth taking seriously. Blacking out even briefly is a very serious red flag requiring medical attention. Heart palpitations appearing during or after fasted sessions require you to stop immediately and seek proper medical evaluation before continuing any fasted training. Feeling like your anxiety consistently spikes the longer you delay your first meal is also a meaningful signal worth paying very close attention to. So, is obsessively extending your fasting window beyond what feels comfortable or feeling compelled to earn every bite of food through additional exercise afterward. That pattern is not metabolic flexibility developing healthily. That is your relationship with food and movement sliding toward punishment and reward dynamics instead. Smart practical adjustments can change the entire experience and outcome if you approach fasted training from a cautious and properly evidence-informed starting point. Shorten the fasting window to just 12 hours initially. Start with short and genuinely light walks rather than any kind of high-intensity intervals. Sip water consistently throughout the morning. Add a small amount of electrolytes to your hydration to support blood pressure and nerve function. Save your heaviest strength sessions and sprint work for fully fed states while your confidence and cellular adaptation builds steadily and safely over weeks. Fasted training stops being an all-or-nothing identity when you approach it with this kind of flexible and sustainable evidence-informed mindset throughout the process. It becomes a practical tool you can adjust freely up or down based on your current recovery status, stress levels, and specific training goals. Imagine zooming all the way out and seeing fasted workouts from the highest and most comprehensive possible perspective before we close this conversation today. Instead of seeing it as you versus your hunger or fasting as some kind of extreme dietary identity, you start to see it differently. You start seeing it as your entire survival orchestra simply rehearsing together for the real demands and challenges of your actual daily life. Every section of that internal orchestra plays a slightly different role during a fasted session. But the shared goal is the same throughout. Keep you moving, thinking, and functioning effectively without requiring a constant external drip of snacks and easily available carbohydrate fuel sources coming in. During a fasted workout, your liver is the lead conductor managing all fuel releases. Glycogen stores open and drip glucose steadily into blood. Your fat cells respond to low insulin and rising adrenaline by releasing fatty acids into the bloodstream for your working muscles to burn efficiently. Your muscles pull from both glucose and fatty acids, burning fat more aggressively than they would during a comparable fully fed training session. Your brain leans on glucose first and foremost. Then it quietly and gradually accepts more ketones as an alternative supplementary fuel as glycogen dips. Meanwhile, your hormones, including adrenaline, growth hormone, and cortisol, rise just enough to mobilize energy and actively protect your valuable lean muscle tissue. This is when your body proves something genuinely important about its fundamental design. It was never actually built for constant all-day grazing and snacking. Modern habits tell you to take sugary pre-workout products, snack every 2 hours, and panic at even the slightest manageable sense of morning hunger. Historically, the metabolic pattern was exactly and completely reversed. You moved first. You ate after. Walking and working before food was the default always. Fasted training is less about deprivation or suffering and far more about metabolic education. Teaching your body to become truly and lastingly multilingual. Instead of only understanding, just give me carbohydrates immediately, your cells gradually learn to speak stored fat, liver glycogen, and eventually ketones with fluency. It is like upgrading from a single fragile fuel engine that panics and stalls the moment the tank dips toward a flexible and resilient hybrid. That slight morning hunger before a fasted session gradually becomes a productive training signal rather than an emergency requiring immediate food with enough repetition. With consistent practice over weeks, your body measurably increases fat oxidation during low to moderate cardio sessions. Insulin sensitivity improves across the board. Cellular cleanup pathways get regularly nudged in a positive direction. Chronic inflammation can begin trending meaningfully downward over months of consistent, intelligent practice. Your brain gradually and consistently practices staying focused and clear even when strong feed me now signals are growing loudest during training. Over time, you also sharpen something that almost never gets deliberately trained in any modern fitness approach or popular dietary conversation anywhere at all. Your ability to accurately distinguish true physical hunger from simple habitual eating behavior tied entirely to the clock and social eating patterns. The real difference between it is noon and I always eat now versus my body genuinely and urgently needs nutritional fuel right now. That important distinction becomes progressively clearer when you have repeatedly experienced real movement on an empty stomach and survived it completely intact and well. So imagine your very next morning. You wake up. You glance at the clock. You decide whether to train fasted or eat first today, instead of choosing from fear, social media hype, guilt about past choices, or confusion about conflicting online fitness advice. You choose from genuine understanding. You picture your internal orchestra clearly and confidently. You know exactly what your liver will do during the session and how it will respond. You know how your hormones will shift and negotiate with each other throughout. You know how your muscles will manage their available fuel sources. The question stops being the exhausting and unanswerable, is fasted training good or bad, and becomes something far more useful and personally meaningful. It becomes, which metabolic performance do I actually want my body to rehearse and develop today, given my current recovery status and goals? That shift in perspective is where the true and lasting power of understanding fasted exercise actually lies. Not in any specific fat-burning number, not in any hormone chart or before and after photo, but in the genuine ability to make a fully informed and confident daily choice. You are no longer guessing about what is happening inside you. You are no longer afraid of morning hunger or confused by competing advice. You are no longer a passive recipient of loud and contradictory online fitness opinions about whether fasted training will make or break your results. You are someone who genuinely understands the complete internal story of what actually happens inside your body when you choose to move before eating. And that understanding, far more than any specific protocol, supplement, or training program, is what gives you lasting and real metabolic power going forward.